Hello, everybody. Eric Eisenhut here, proud board member of the United Goalkeeping Alliance. With me today is Skye Eddy of Soccer Parenting. Skye, how are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me, Eric. I'm looking forward to some goalkeeper chat. Always love talking goalkeeping. So,
Yeah, and I appreciate having you because this is definitely a topic, mistake management, where I think I was talking to you before. Like I'm from Western PA, I live in Western PA, excuse me, and finding a second generation goalkeeper is very difficult. So when parents are trying to help goalkeepers, they struggle. They really, really do. And I think this topic is needed, and I'm appreciative of you helping with us tonight, helping this with us
absolutely.
tonight.
Absolutely.
So let's stick, guy, if we could, can we start with just getting a little background for you? If you could just share with us your goalkeeping experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have always been a goalkeeper. I've been a goalkeeper since like the age of 5. My brother's goalkeeper on my older brother's soccer team, Kenrick Kessler. I just loved watching him. I would stand on the sideline during my brother's games and pretend that I was in the goal and like pretend to dive, even when I was really like 3, 4, 5 years old. So I have a long history in the game. And was really lucky that I grew up with a lot of opportunities to play. My Title IX baby myself. So those of you that are raising children of this generation, maybe you understand what that is from growing up yourselves. But I had many opportunities, thankfully, to play and compete. I grew up playing in Northern Virginia and went on and played collegiately at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. We have a sport management degree. I transferred. I played my last season at George Mason University, where we lost in the national championship game. I was a first team All American. We did lose 6-0 against Chapel Hill, so that was not a great last college memory of mine. But to make it there was a historic run for George Mason and something that I consider to be such a privileged experience. I had to be part of that just incredible team. I grew up playing ODP. It was Region 1 goalkeeper. I was Youth All-American goalkeeper, so on what was then the youth national team, but really it was just a paper team at that point. We really didn't do anything. Um, and then, it's kind of interesting. I see women now that are graduating from college and having a great pro career. So I was a first team All-American. I was MVP of the Final Four my senior year in college. And that was basically the last game I ever played because I wasn't on the women's national team at that point. There was not a pro league here in the States. Eventually, I sold everything and I moved overseas to Italy and had just the most amazing experience for a few months in Italy, but the team could never really sort out the visa that I needed. I'm so excited when I see women now and the opportunities that people have to continue to grow and develop, because what I know for sure about goalkeeping is that this is a process. And we'll talk a lot today about mistakes, and we learn through mistakes. So, having and building that experience, we see goalkeepers that are still competing into their 30s. And finally, the position is coming around to them because they've had enough mistakes. They've learned enough lessons that now they can manage the position and really perform. So it's exciting to see people having that opportunity now when I didn't. But I've always been a coach, Eric. So even in high school, I coached goalkeepers to make some money. And then I started working. I was a camper at number 1 camps, Dr. Macknick's camps. And so I was a staff coach for Doc for many years. I was his first female director ever, her first female on staff ever, and ended up directing camps for him, and then moved on and worked at Soccer Plus and Tony DeChico's camps for many years. And spent a lot of time in the youth game. I worked briefly with our U14 national team as a goalkeeper coach, training camp there. And goalkeeping is so much part of me. I consider myself a goalkeeper always.
It's awesome. I love hearing people's stories. I
Mhm.
really do. I think they're all different. They're all unique in their own way. And you and I are comparable in ages, so I know the exact age that you're talking about, the Title IX and everything that went on during that time frame. Before we get into like mistake management, I want to kind of lay the groundwork, if we could, for key differeces between from a parent's perspective,
Mhm.
raising a field player versus raising a goalkeeper. So I want to
Yeah.
say, if we could, just kind of lay the groundwork there, if we could.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that what is really important, and probably, a lot of the parents that are part of your platform and they're listening tonight, were really excited to get some education that's specific to them, because absolutely there are just tremendous differences between how we show up as a parent for a field player versus how we show up as a goalkeeper, the unique stress, the unique experience that a goalkeeper is having, the unique way a goalkeeper has to learn and does learn and grow and develop. And oftentimes their isolation as a goalkeeper, we feel, like we're kind of not part of the team. Sometimes we're not as connected. Our experience is different than field players. So providing support and guidance as a parent of a goalkeeper, and kind of showing up in their corner, requires, I think, a little bit more intentionality. And goalkeeping is like a whole nother sport within the sport. And obviously our young goalkeepers need to be field players. They need to be comfortable with the ball at their feet. That needs to, obviously, it's a huge part of the game now. Side note, the pass back law just went into the whole game when my senior year in college. So, I grew up with somebody being able to pass the ball back to me and pick it up and stand there. And then, so, the game's evolved and changed so much in the last 30 years. And so, while the goalkeeper needs to be comfortable with the ball at the feet and have those skills, supporting a player and trying to learn and grow and develop, where they might be getting different information from a goalkeeper coach versus their field player coach, and having to, manage the nuance of working with coaches, are all things that kind of stand out to me front and center when I think about like the new unique challenges of supporting a goalkeeper. But what's most important is that they know you're in their corner and that they have somebody that is always there. They have somewhere safe to go back at the end of whatever that the game or practice experience might be.
I like how you said going back to a safe environment, because that to me is absolutely needed if you want to be able to share and compare notes with anybody. And I think that from a parent's perspective, I think some of the qualities that they might not, there are some qualities from a goalkeeping perspective that parents might not know about. What qualities would you introduce parents to that you'd want them to focus on with their development discussions with their goalkeepers?
Yeah, I mean, that's tricky because if we're talking about like development within the game and like a child developing the skill or developing proficiencies around the position in certain ways, like I think we need to just sort of pause and say, like, is that our role as a parent? And really what we need to do is make sure that we have coaches that are in our kids' lives that can support them from that standpoint. And, what is our role as a parent when it comes to helping them set goals and keep working towards their goals? Or what is our role as a parent when it comes to helping them with the mental side of the game, which we're very uniquely positioned to support them with? But from I don't know if you were asking about like the tactical side of the game, that's tricky for a parent that doesn't have a big background in the game themselves to try to come in and support the goalkeeper there, because, the position is just so different. And what's so easy to see from a goalkeeper is the mistakes. Like what's so obvious that stands out is what might have gone wrong. And, we know as goalkeepers ourselves that, you can do 90% of it right and then something goes wrong. And so like there's so many right things that happen and so many positive things that happen, even when a goal is scored. And so it's really hard, I think, for a parent to, ascertain, like when they're looking at the situation and your child gets scored on and you feel such emotion and such intense emotion if they did make a mistake, or if there's a lot on the line, or if you're just feeling a lot of stress as a parent because you haven't really decoupled from your child like you need to, that we feel deeply, and how we show up for our children when we're feeling that amount of stress is really matters. It is, how intentional we are about those car ride home conversations, or, conversations on reflection that we might want our children to have. It's tricky. It's really tricky finding that role as a parent.
How would you suggest parents go about that?
Well, I mean, I don't know about you, Eric, but reflection was a big part of my learning. It's a big part of my life now. Even, I go and I do a big speaking event and, maybe I'm giving a keynote of some sort and I'll reflect on that experience afterwards on how it went, what I liked about it, what I could do different next time. And so one of the biggest tools that I think parents and coaches of goalkeepers as well can provide players with is to provide your child with a mechanism, with a process, with information, with guidance around reflection, and let them do the reflecting themselves, let them do the learning themselves. But, whether or not it's reflecting on a mistake you made. And, I would always, even from the age of 12, 13, 14, I was diagramming in a notebook goals that were scored on me, where they were scored from, what the situation was, what I felt like I did right, what I did wrong. I would try to remember where my positioning was in those situations so that I could learn from that. And, this is what we need to encourage in young goalkeepers, because this is what goalkeeping is all about. It's making mistakes, it's reflecting, it's moving on, and what's next. And so I think, that's something that a parent could really, resource their child around a process for reflection, whether it be not necessarily goals against, but good things that happened. Maybe a parent could do some statistics for their child if their child wants them to around the possession that you kept after a goal kick or off of a goalkeeper distribution, if possession is kept. And so then the child can reflect on that. Okay, well, every time I threw the ball, half the time the team lost possession on the second touch and the other team ended up having the ball. So that's something that I can reflect on. What do I need to do about that? How can I bring that into my training? What can I talk to my coach about to try to get into the training environment so that I can work on my throwing distribution more, so I can change that narrative and then set a goal around what I want that percentage to be moving forward.
Do you have a time frame in regards to, like, some people have like a 24-hour rule? Game ends, we won't talk about it. We'll let everyone kind of do the reflection, take it in for 24 hours before we actually talk about it to remove
Yeah.
emotion. Thoughts
Do you
on
mean
that? Are you
between a parent and a child?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Let's start because then I was going to get into the ride home. Like, that would be my next question is, so based on the timing that you would suggest, what's the car ride home like if there is like a 24-hour rule that you somehow follow?
Yeah, yeah. So I know that there are some organizations that like promote a 24-hour rule between coaches and parents communicating after a match. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of that. I think that, the work I'm doing at Soccer Parenting is about establishing trust. It's about building collaborative relationships. So sometimes we need to do that. Like if there's an unusual amount of stress, or if we feel like we can't show up as an adult to the conversation, then yes, absolutely, we need to cool off. But by and large, I think, we should be able to have conversations with one another. And I kind of feel the same thing with our children. I think the car ride home, I think the child needs to lead the way. The goalkeeper, your child, your athlete absolutely needs to lead the way. And, for my kids, sometimes my daughter would like to talk about the game and she'd get in the car and be really chatty and be frustrated about something and want to talk about it, or have done something amazing and want to talk about it and like highlight it and like go back and relive it. Other times she was just tired and hungry. And so really my question to my children after sports was not anything like, I love to watch you play. I feel that puts a lot of pressure on kids to like perform for each parent. My question to my children was, how do you feel? And from that, we would go into the car ride home. And a lot of times it involved just turning on the radio or them putting on their headphones and us not talking, or talking about school the next week, or going and getting something to eat, whatever it might be. So we really need to let our children lead the way there. But I will say every child's different too. And then eventually, as my daughter got older, and my daughter played in a high performance environment, she played collegiately. She was an All-American herself in college as well. She played Division III college. And as she got older in her career and got a little bit more maturity around reflection and stuff, then sometimes she would ask me questions around, well, what do you think I could have done better? What would you have done in this situation? Given my background as a player and coach, I was, in a position where I felt like I could provide some advice around that. But Those conversations were great when they happened, but, there was no rhyme or reason to the car ride home being a certain way. We did have a little bit of a routine around it sometimes, and I have some other ideas based on other conversations I've had with sports psychologists. But, I think there's a lot of ways we can resource the car ride home to make it less stressful. And parents, if you have any questions around that, or ways that you're showing up, or things that aren't working, or absolutely just pop them into the chat. I actually just realized I don't have the chat open, so I'll open up the chat, and you can always pop questions in there as well.
What's your take then on if a goalkeeper's comfortable with this, based on like, how do you feel? When do you want, let the goalkeeper dictate the feedback? What's your take on in-game feedback?
From a parent in the middle of the game?
Yes.
That's tricky.
It is. It happens frequently, good or bad.
Yeah. Personally, I would say the only time I might see myself, my daughter was not a goalkeeper. I'm 5'10", her dad's 6'1", she's 5'3". So she wanted to be a goalkeeper. She was a 5'3" center back, like she wanted to be a goalkeeper. She had all that mentality. But I would say maybe if there was like a really obvious positioning thing, or if the ball was at the other side of the field and your child's just really not paying attention and their vertical positioning is wrong, I might like give them a visual or a cue, but it might not be telling them what to do. It might just be that we have a little routine where, hey, I might just call your voice or call your name and say and say focus, or maybe not even something that was even clear, but I might just say their name and come up with a word that would make them realize, and then make a decision, and then adjust their position. And if they did it wrong, we cannot tell them, no, another 3 steps forward, move higher, as much as we want to. I just don't think that is the way that we need to be showing up as parents. The game is theirs. It's their opportunity to learn, develop. It's their performance environment. And they certainly don't need us distracting them. Distracting does not help them learn.
Is a question in the chat from an 11-year-old. I love it. Our 11-year-old's asking, what is it about I love watching you play that creates pressure?
Yeah, I think that if you like your parents saying that to you, or you don't feel that, that's great. And obviously that's fine. I felt, because me as a parent, one of the things that I struggled with, especially with my daughter, was this concept of decoupling. Like, I wasn't living vicariously through her. I really feel confident about that. But I felt things very deeply when Callie was playing. And so I had to myself, as she got older, really work on what I call decoupling, like not caring so much. Like being up there and supporting her, but like literally my heart can't race like this. Like this is her experience, and I'm so lucky to be here to watch her. And so I felt like personally, when I would say that it just sort of promoted that sense of really caring so much. Like, I love to watch you play. And instead, what I wanted my child to know is that I cared about how they felt. And that was my priority after the game.
It's funny that's the old never mind. I was actually trying to read the text
I was like,
at the same
it's
time.
okay.
So
Yeah,
there is another one in here too. Thoughts on video,
yeah.
and when is the best time to watch? Tiffany mentioned
Oh yeah,
right
absolutely,
after.
Tiffany. I mean, if she wants, or it's a daughter, right? Yeah. If she wants to watch it, absolutely. Like, that, promote it. If she wants to talk all about the game and reflect, absolutely have those conversations. And I don't think there's a bad time to watch video. I think it's a great time. Now we have to look at ourselves as parents and saying, hey, watch this video so you can see this mistake you made. Do you see how you did this and that? Like, she might not want to hear that conversation. But if she's like, hey, do you have that save that I made? Or can I watch where they scored the goal so I could see it, and let them see it? Absolutely. I think that's great.
Yeah,
And I mean, every child's so different. I work with some parents whose kids are like, want to talk about the game the whole time. So, and some don't. I mean, decompress, that's up to your child to figure out how they manage that. And for us as parents to try to read those cues.
What are some, just kind of transitioning then to kind of continuously advise parents on different challenges? What are some of the unique challenges that a goalkeeper faces when it comes to development that a parent might need to be more aware of?
Hmm. So I think that what is really important for parents to understand about goalkeeping is the process of learning that's involved in goalkeeping and how unusual it is. Even anything for a young child trying to even get and feel the set position. So where they're balanced, where their weight is towards the balls of their feet, where their knees are bent, their hands might be up if the ball's further away or lower if it's like a breakaway type situation. But regardless, like even that set position is so uncomfortable for somebody to stand in, and it's not a normal thing. And then slowly over time, it becomes a normal thing. Even now, for me, just the other day, I was out on a walk and somebody was playing basketball next to me, and the basketball came over, and I found myself like getting into the set position real quick because the basketball was coming towards me. Like it just is like a natural thing that happens. So I think my point of that is like goalkeeping is so hard to learn, and there's so many skills that build on one another, whether it's proprioception and a child understanding where their body is in space and how to feel that so that they can then manipulate their body so that they can make that diving save, or so that they can realize, wait, no, I need to go backwards instead, and have that body control to be able to move like that. So as parents, we need to understand really how difficult it is to build the skills. And it takes a tremendous amount of time. And then as we're working with children, all that's built onto that is everything that happens through their growth and maturation. So a child that's going through a growth spurt and goes from, and grows 4 inches in the course of a year, and how much harder it will be for them to control their body. And maybe then making saves that they made before, getting to the ground as fast as they were before, or maybe they haven't built up the muscle that they need to build up with their bigger body to be able to perform like they were before. So there's a lot of complexity to a goalkeeper's continual development. And I think as parents, we need to understand that. But I would say one of the key things and ways that a parent can really help the goalkeeper is with the physical side of the game. Like those are things that you can layer in to their at home time, to their having fun time, making sure that they're they can balance well and move forwards and move backwards. Goalkeepers have to move backwards so much more than a field player, and in such a more powerful way. So like working on those types of movements and stuff, I think are things that parents could be kind of uniquely aware of. So I'm thinking about like the physical side of goalkeeping and like the developmental process of a child as they're growing up as a goalkeeper, and just the physical side of it. But also tangent to that, and also, relevant obviously to this conversation, is the mental side of the game as a goalkeeper and supporting your child. My daughter, Callie, now is coaching a team in Ohio. She works for the Columbus Crew, and is coaching her first youth team. And she was talking about the goalkeeper and how upset they were when they got scored on. And so, a parent showing up with the right words, the right language, the right emotion to your child when they make that mistake. Probably not just saying, oh, it was everyone else's fault is not necessarily the right thing to say to the goalkeeper, because, quite frankly, we need as goalkeepers to understand and manage mistakes and understand and see the problems and things that we could do better. Maybe you have a very small child who is playing a goal, and it was a shot at the very top of the goal. And so they literally would be physically impossible for them to get to that ball. Helping them maybe understand that, but also giving them a vision for how they'll be able to make that save when they're older. And I think is really important, especially talking about kind of like a growth mindset and our ability to push back. I think that's probably some of the key things, just around ways that parents can show up, and how goalkeepers kind of develop, like the process for learning and development is a little bit different.
You mentioned the mental side of the game and when
Mhm.
negative things occur. And the interesting thing is when a negative thing occurs, let's say a game-winning goal was given up in the 80th minute, the opponent is celebrating. The other parents are celebrating. Your coach probably has their palms in the sky, like hands in the air. Your teammates are all looking at you. All the parents are looking at you. And that goalkeeper is probably staring right at their parents. And
Mhm.
what do you like, that happens unfortunately more common than
Yeah.
it should, what's your advice to a parent when that in that exact moment, like that's a
Mhm.
hard one to me.
Yeah. I mean, my mom had this like fist pump thing that she would do sitting on the sideline. That was just my sort of reassurance if I ever did kind of look over there. But I would say that in a moment that is not related to the game, that is absolutely not related to the car ride home, that's related to like 3 nights later after dinner when you're driving to go get ice cream and you're in the car and you say, hey, let's talk about how you're showing up during a game because I want to talk to you about the fact that you keep looking over to me on the sideline. And as parents, we need to ask ourselves, why is that happening? Like, am I giving them instruction that they're
Mhm.
looking for? Are they looking for reassurance? Am I talking too much? Like, they really should be looking at their coach. They really should be getting the ball out of the net, getting a lot of confidence to their teammates and moving forward and getting that ball up so that we can kick it off so that we can try to take it so that we can start the game again and so that we can try to equalize and score a goal in the last 10 minutes. Like that's what your child needs to be thinking. And so I think it really requires a lot of reflection first on us as parents. Like, why do we think that's happening? What are they getting from looking over to me? And then to talk to your child about a different process that they can go through in that moment. And if you can help your child resource around a different process where they're looking to their coach, where they're rallying their teammates, where they're being confident and moving forward and moving past it, like that is a huge win for you as a parent and for your child as a goalkeeper. And it's us being intentional about finding those moments to have those conversations with our children so that at the next game, and then maybe at the next game, they look over to you once instead of 5 times, and we can celebrate that. And then eventually the habit gets broken. But again, I mean, I did like looking over to my mom and getting a little fist pump, but it wasn't like I was relying on my parents for any source of information or communication or anything like that. I do, think that's important that we think about that.
Yeah, there's got about 7 questions in the chat. I'm just going to throw a couple at you if I may.
Sure.
What other training can keepers engage in to sharpen their skills, techniques on the field?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think your players should be playing on the field as much as possible. They should be playing futsal in the winter as a field player, if possible. Dealing with the ball at their feet as much as possible. I will say the game has evolved in the last, like, I think goalkeepers are utilized within the team training. When I was growing up, probably for you too, Eric, it was like, okay, goalkeepers, go over there. We'll call you in 40 minutes when we need you. And we would
Still
like
like that now?
throw it sit on our back and like throw the ball up in the air, so if that is happening to your child, then absolutely they need to have in their bag some index cards with exercises and things that they can do so they can go pick up a little workout and they can put themselves through a workout if they have another goalkeeper there, if they're on their own. Kevin Hartman and I have a funny conversation about like trying to do those 40 minutes on your own. Like, how much can you really do? So if that is happening, then the player needs to advocate for themselves, get in with a team and practice as a field player, and then have maybe 5 or 10 minutes to warm up on their own before they're needed as a goalkeeper. But side note to that whole conversation is the importance for us as parents and really making sure that our kids have the support and have the challenges that they need within training.
Sorry, can I?
It was a question. I'm sorry, I missed. I think I feel like. Oh,
sorry. I'm sorry. I asked the question. I was actually just trying to understand outside of just soccer,
yeah.
what other types of training can you inject in terms of them to be able to sharpen their agility, their
Absolutely.
coordination? Because I know soccer is great, but I'm just saying outside of that, what can actually be complementary to their performance on the field or in net?
Sure.
So, yeah.
How old is your child? I'm just curious, Mary.
He's 14.
Yeah. So, I mean, so your kids, they need to start, if possible, if they want to go to the gym and they want to get stronger, like those are key times. I will say my daughter never wanted to go to the gym. It's a funny story that I tell on Soccer Parenting because like she had a gym membership. Her best friend who lived like next door, they could walk to the gym, and Hannah would always say, Callie, let's go to the gym when they were like 13, 14, and Callie never would go. And now she goes to the gym almost every day. So it just took time for her to mature into that. And that didn't happen for her really till she went to college. And I mean, she did a little bit, but not enough. So yes, our kids can be going and building the physical side of the game. If you go to soccer parenting, and we have a lot of parent education around the physical dimensions of development and like the different movement skills that children need to have. And I think all athletes, all children need to have these movement skills, but goalkeeping especially. I would say anything related to balance. I actually was a gymnast. My brother competed gymnastics collegiately. I stayed in gymnastics until I got too big at the age of like 12 or 13. I was just too tall. And gymnastics absolutely made a huge difference in my proprioception, my ability to move, and to just my overall agility. So I think anything like martial arts, gymnastics for younger kids are great building blocks for developing their athleticism. But I think as parents of athletes now, like gone are the times where you just send your kids off to training and they come back, like the training load, what's being asked of our children now as athletes is so much different than when I grew up. Whereas my parents got away with just like, okay, yeah, just time to go to training and yeah, whatever you want. Now I think as parents, we need to be a little bit more intentional about learning and educating ourselves so that, and obviously, you know that you guys are here trying to do just that. So that we can develop those different skills. But I would also say that having a lot of balance is really important for our children in terms of other activities. And that's sometimes hard if they're spending so much time doing soccer. I get that. My daughter played in the ECNL. It's 4 nights a week. It was crazy. It was a lot of travel. And so finding another sport for her to play was hard, but she did do a lot of futsal training and, you know, found some balance and joy. And that was really low key, low stress, lots of fun. So it's kind of finding that balance there is key too. Hey, Christian.
Oh, thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you.
You bet.
Continuing with development from a goalkeeper coaching perspective, what should parents look for in good goalkeeper coaching, and what do soccer clubs often miss in goalkeeping development?
Gosh, we've seen so much progress in this, but a good club that has a goalkeeping curriculum will have a goalkeeper coach that knows your child, that is qualified to be a goalkeeper coach, that is qualified to work with kids and help them develop over the span of ages and their physical development. That they will ideally, and this is going to be really hard, but if your child's playing at a high level within the club, meaning, and because it kind of sometimes falls in this level, then they should have a goalkeeper coach that works with them within the team as well. So for us at the Richmond Strikers, where I worked for many years, we did goalkeeper training was available to any child that wanted to be a goalkeeper. When they came to goalkeeper training, they had to come for a 6-week block and commit to that because it was developmental week after week. Of course, they might miss a week, but they couldn't just drop in and out. So they would come to 6 weeks of training. And then as the kids got older, the ECNL goalkeepers, I would be at the field working with the goalkeepers for 20, 30 minutes, and then we would join the team. I would be in the goal with the goalkeepers while they're working with field players, with a team. We might take all the female goalkeepers for the U15 or the U14s, U16s, and bring those two teams together, and then the goalkeepers might just train with one team. But it wasn't like we had a staff that could go to every single practice, but we made it work. Your goalkeepers really need time with field players and a coach that is a goalkeeper coach in the goal, behind the goal with them. I think giving them instruction and guidance, if at all possible, that's an ideal learning environment. But you know, just like all coaches are not ideal, you know, what you're really looking for in the qualities of the goalkeeper coach is somebody that is really uplifting, somebody that's very empowering, somebody that's very challenging to your child and meets their child where they need to be met when it comes to like the mental performance side of things. You know, I think, you know, I always cringe when I'm hearing the yelling and the screaming and, we got to be tough, we got to be harder. Like there's a way to challenge child to work to their absolute highest level. And I've worked with many boys and men in their high teens and even in the college age. And it has nothing to do with gender. I think there is a way that we can really challenge people to perform to their best and be challenged mentally and physically without it being a negative environment. And so I think goalkeepers need to know the coach is there to support, empower them, and meet their needs holistically.
Well said. Well said. Tiffany has a question here regarding encouraging or motivating the goalkeepers so they understand it's a constantly developing position.
Yeah.
What do you say? What are the right words for that?
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk to parents about tonight is the concept of self-determination theory and growth mindset. And so this kind of builds into the idea of growth mindset. And I think the best word that we can say to our children is yet. Oh, you haven't learned that yet. Oh, your body can't quite do that yet. Oh, you haven't performed that, you haven't made that mistake enough yet. It's really kind of like you haven't been in that situation yet, or this is the first time you were there, so this is why there was a problem. What can you do so that doesn't happen again? And I love the concept of growth mindset, which is a pretty popularized concept now. This is Dr. Carol Dweck, who wrote the book Mindset, who talks about growth versus fixed mindset. A growth mindset is a more high performance mindset, whereas a fixed mindset is a mindset that will struggle. What's the great thing about this information and this research is that what we know about growth mindset and fixed mindset is that one, we don't have one or the other. Sometimes I feel more this way or more that way, or I show up this way or that way. But actually the words that we use with our children can help them will help impact their ability to show up with more of a growth mindset. And for those of you who are curious, Dr. Dweck has a really good TED Talk called The Power of Yet that I would encourage you to watch. I use this technique with kids that I'm coaching with my own children now. Even my son in college got a bad grade on a math test last year. And I was like high-fiving, talking to him on the phone and high-fiving my friends because he said, yeah, I just haven't learned this part yet. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. He's not saying I can never do this. He's feeling hopeful. So that would absolutely be something that parents could learn about, a growth mindset, how we can help our kids transition. People with a growth mindset believe that the work that they put in and the process of learning and developing, the time that they're putting in, the focus that they're putting in actually translates into improvement. Whereas children or adults or people with a fixed mindset don't see that correlation or necessarily believe in that correlation. So it's tied into motivation a little bit, but absolutely, I would say, kind of showing up with that mentality is important.
I tell people that I tell kids in particular, the word can't is a swear.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to say that.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to say that word.
Yeah.
And then I'll actually say,
what do you let him say? Because I have a thing. I say, you can't say can't, but you are allowed.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. You can't say that.
What do you let him
say? I just say, well, you're not allowed to. It's a swear.
Well, I say, you're allowed to say, I find this very difficult.
There you go.
You can't say I can't. So the kids that I coach all the time is like, I'm finding this very difficult.
Get all matured on you.
Real training, but yeah, can't is not a word. Like one of my mentors growing up was Kim Maslin. Kim was the goalkeeper for the first Women's World Cup, along with Mary Harvey. And she was one of my coaches in ODP growing up. So she's like the whole generation ahead of me that was showing up, coming back to Region 1 camp and working with goalkeepers. And her also kind of similar response was that you're never going to know if you don't go. You have to just try. You have to make the effort. You can't just say, oh, I can't do that. You gotta go for it. So, yeah.
I have a couple of questions in here regarding confidence. I'm just going to read a few of them and just kind of, if you could just give me a moment, but they're all kind of around the same answer. So I want to couple these if I may. So here's the first one, or I'll just kind of go through all of them. How do we handle a situation when a team blame you for a goal and getting the goalkeeper's confidence back?
Yeah.
Second question was, any advice for supporting a goalkeeper when they lose their confidence based on a loss in penalty kicks? And then the last one that I saw was regarding confidence. How can a goalkeeper get their confidence back after a shot to the face in a one-on-one situation?
I love getting hit in the face. I
I do
miss getting
too.
hit in the face.
I concur. I'm with you on that one. Like, you shake it off.
Yeah. No, I understand. I understand. I really do kind of miss that. Sometimes, I was getting my national goalkeeper license about 7 years ago now, down at IMG in Florida. And Kevin Hartman, who had a long, stellar career as a goalkeeper in MLS, had just retired, and he was getting his national goalkeeper license. And so, of course, he was like the demo dog working in the goal all week. And the other candidates that were there were often working as field players. And there was this, we were working on free kicks, and Kevin took one to the face. And Jason Grubb, who's another friend of mine, he works down in Austin for Austin FC. He and I looked at each other. We're like, oh, you're kind of jealous. So, okay, moving on, answering your question, just a little goalkeeping banter on the side here. So let's talk about, I kind of made notes here. So the team is blaming your child for the goal. So that is absolutely, depending on the age of your child, is a conversation that the coach needs to handle. Like, that is not okay for that to happen. Even when it is your child's really mistake, like they took their eye off the ball and they made a mistake. Like, these things happen, and these things happen to a team, and the team has to respond to them together. And so what we need to try to refrain from is the conversation. Yeah, well, Jacob missed 3 easy breakaways, so, we should just be mad at him too. Or, like, we try to protect our kids by saying things like that. We actually need to stop doing that type of conversation. And instead, we need to have our child advocate for themselves, go and talk to the coach. If they're not comfortable with that, then I definitely think this is a time where, as a parent, in a very non-confrontational, like, I want my child to feel inspired, and this is what's happening. How can you help? How can you help them? Or the child, if they're comfortable going to the coach and saying, this is the feedback that I'm getting, and for my team, and we need to change this narrative. And or the child probably won't use the one narrative, but how can you help? What can we do? This is not okay for this to be happening. So I just want to be really clear that is absolutely a team management issue for the coach, and that it's the coach that should be held accountable to that culture. Now, these things happen. When I did Goalkeeper Week last year for Soccer Parenting, Christian was on there. They were nice enough to sponsor Goalkeeper Week with some equipment, and Christian and I did a nice conversation about choosing gear that's on the Soccer Parent Resource Center for parents right now. But one of the other conversations we had was with Jill Lloyden, former national team goalkeeper, and we were talking about that issue exactly. Like, how does a goalkeeper manage those team relationships when the team is getting frustrated with them? And it's not something that you can really handle in the moment. It's something that needs to be handled at the next practice, needs to be handled off practice. So unfortunately, those things happen during games. They're not okay, but to try to manage them within the game moment is going to be really hard to try to have any resolution to that. It's something that we need to be intentional about leading and teaching our children how to lead and how to have those difficult conversations with teammates and coaches.
Skye, what if we have one of those unfortunate coaches that are blaming you for, as a goalkeeper, for the issue, or for them? What? Yeah.
I'm so sorry when that happens. That's just not good coaching. That's like a bad practice on the part of a coach. So we need to start the conversation acknowledging that that's not a great situation, that our child's in that environment. And we do need to let our child know that, it's not okay for your coach to be saying that to you. But they are, she is, he is. And so this is how we need to come up with a plan for how you're going to respond to this. And it might be an opportunity, depending on the age, where you do and go and talk to the coach if you're comfortable. Again, non-confrontational, but with very specifics. Now, quite frankly, it also, it could be a coach and the child did make a mistake and the coach is calling them out on it, and the child is having difficulty because of the approach of the coach to calling out their mistake. And maybe it's as simple as, hey, coach, when I make a mistake and you want to talk to me about it, it would be really helpful if you didn't talk to me about it in front of the whole team, but I would love to have a conversation with you about practice the next day, before practice the next day, when we can have more privacy. But when you call me out in front of the whole team, that doesn't help my confidence. And I feel like the team's losing confidence in me, but I'm committed to learning and growing. So if there is actually a mistake you make and it's just a bad approach that the coach is taking to the situation, is one way. But it could be a situation where you have to advocate for your child, and it's tricky. My daughter had coaches along the way that I didn't like. My kids had teachers that I didn't quite like all the way. And how we manage those relationships as a parent is something that, requires some nuance. If you have a goalkeeper coach at the club and it's the team coach that's doing that, then the goalkeeper coach could be a really good advocate and support system for the goalkeeper, and then could also go talk to the coach, or, if you need to escalate it to a director at the club to have that conversation. But it's hard to know without the exact situation and what happened, like what type of mistake was made. I did want to talk about PKs because that was one of your other questions. So again, this is something, in fact, we're writing an article about this for soccer parenting that'll be out, because this came up in conversation. I was like, oh, we don't have any content on that. This is, again, something that has to be done ahead of time. So you don't have a conversation with your child about how they feel about PKs in the car ride home after they had a PK. This is a conversation that you have with your child on a Monday before they're even thinking about it. Or maybe 2 weeks after they had a situation, or when you were watching another game on TV and Liverpool has a PK against them, and that opens up the conversation for you to have with your goalkeeper child about how they're going to handle that situation and how they're going to rebound from mistakes. And I think watching professional level goalkeepers and how they manage that environment and how they move on is really, really important. We had PKs on Sunday night in the New York Red Bull and the Columbus Crew MLS playoff game, and like the response from the goalkeepers after they were scored on. I think you can just watch that and highlight that to your child in how they respond emotionally to that moment. Because it doesn't need to be a confidence draw. Like the goalkeeper's not supposed to make the save. And so them making the save is brilliant. This is their chance to shine. This is their chance to give their team some hope. This is a chance for them to have all the attention on them to try to do something brilliant that they will remember. And but the expectation is that that they don't need to stress so much about that. And then the ball in the face, that's just goalkeeping. Like, those things happen. I think, you need to obviously make sure that they're healthy and safe, but then it's just, you got to move on. Well, that's going to happen if you're a goalkeeper. Like,
I agree.
Honestly, like we can't afford our children so much time to think too much about that. If they're going to be a goalkeeper, they've got to rebound from being hit in the face, from getting knocked over on a corner or something like that. They've got to have a physical resilience about them to perform in this role. So as long as they're healthy and safe and don't have a concussion or something like that, they have to. It's a lot. Maybe a question that I used to ask kids a lot at that younger age is, are you injured or are you hurt? Like, are you hurting? Are you injured? Like you need to come out of the game, or does this just hurt in the moment? And, for kids to be able to understand the difference between that might be helpful.
We have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to try and give you a couple more questions. And actually, towards the end of that question, it was said, and how do they lose their fear that this won't happen again, or lose the fear of that happening again? Unfortunately, it probably will happen again. And I hate to say that, but that's an unfortunate fact.
Yeah. And it especially sucks when you have braces. Yeah. Like it's just being a goalkeeper.
You get touched and you start bleeding from the mouth, right?
Stuck to my braces. Like I can't even talk for the rest of the game because my lip was stuck in my braces. So like Yeah, I mean, those things just happen. It's a physically demanding position that that does take a lot out of you.
All right, we have about 5 minutes of questions, and I want to give us 5 minutes to wrap up. So I'm going to go give a couple questions quickly, if I could.
Sure.
Pre-game warm-ups. Are there any must-have goalkeeper-specific warm-ups you recommend that will differ from the rest of the team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the goalkeeper needs to hit the ground. They need to move. I think a goalkeeper needs to develop what they want, especially a youth goalkeeper that doesn't have somebody warming them up. And that their first opportunity to start in goal will be maybe the team shooting at the end of the warm-up. A goalkeeper needs to advocate for themselves around their warm-up. So maybe they start with their team doing rondos, doing this, moving, getting, moving around. And then when the team progresses to, maybe they're progressing to playing a little small-sided game, the goalkeeper might ask to be in goal or put their gloves on so that they can dive around and hit the ground a little bit if they're playing a possession type game as well. But then absolutely there needs to be a moment where their goalkeeper becomes a goalkeeper, so to speak, and has their specific warm-up that happens prior to the team taking shots. Absolutely, certainly prior to the kickoff. You can't just warm up with the field players the whole time. So for me, alone as a goalkeeper, I do lots of rolling to hit the ground with a ball in my hand. That's kind of old school, but forward roll, back roll, side rolls, log rolls, just like to get my body totally loose and used to hitting the ground. And then if I was alone and didn't have anybody, I'd set up balls on either side and like dive to the left, dive to the right, making sure I had the right positioning and approach to the ball when I'm thinking about that. But hopefully you have a coach that's helping you as well.
Two questions here. First one here, it gets into the competitive versus recreation town soccer. For the less competitive games, rec soccer, what do you recommend is a good mix of time for the amount she would be playing in goal versus on the field? There's less experienced goalies on the team, by the way. And what's a good number of goalies to have on a team?
Yeah, I mean, every team is so different, and you're not going to be able to especially like town level. That's probably like Connecticut if you say town. Or Massachusetts does that too, right? Don't you guys?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they don't do that in Virginia. I think you're lucky if you get somebody that wants to play in goal if you're the coach. I mean, honestly, you're like, oh, phew, I've got a couple kids that want to play in goal. But maybe every kid's rotating through. If your child is expressing some desire to be a goalkeeper and is starting to identify as a goalkeeper, then maybe they play. It depends on how serious they are. Maybe they play a half of every game in goal, but then they need to make sure they're getting good minutes as a field player. Maybe they play a half of every other game in goal, or maybe they play a half of every game in goal, unless it's a game that the team is doing really well at and they don't really need them in goal, and they play the whole time on the field. I think it's really important that our children not just become a goalkeeper. I said I've been a goalkeeper since I was 4, but I will say I played on the field for my high school team. I played on the field at UMass every other game. I played 1 game in goal and 1 game in field at college, Division I college. We need to be able to be, our kids need time to develop those skills.
Especially with your point earlier in this conversation with how it's necessary for goalkeepers to be good with the ball at their feet. I think that's a great thing to do, is to have that opportunity to play the field when you can.
Yeah.
I'm going to combine 2 questions into one, and then I just got a third question and that I want to ask as well. And I'm sorry about that, but it's a good one. So here I'm going to combine these 2. How can we help our young GKs find their voice in guiding the team during games? And what's the best way to encourage a quiet goalkeeper to get loud and communicate? And how loud is too loud?
Yeah, so for the kids that are really struggling to communicate, when I was working with younger goalkeepers, it's actually just giving them a vernacular. So giving them a language, giving them, this is what you have to say every time you need to call keeper. Or this is a lot of times what happens is they get overloaded and they just don't, it just becomes too much to try to speak. So we have to give them a 1-word direction or a 2-word direction, whether it's push out or mark up or just like something very simple. And then I would just introduce one little concept of his time. It seems so easy to us on the sideline to try to say, why aren't they talking to them? Why are they doing this? Because they're concentrating on the game and they're looking at the ball and they're thinking about their positioning and they're trying not to remember the mistake they just made because they're trying to think about the game forward. And then they're thinking about what the coach is saying and they're listening to my parents and the other parents. So it's just so much clutter that's happening. And so the communication is like one of the first things that goes. So I would just, a lot of times the younger goalkeepers are really struggling for communication, even just starting with, you have to say you have to say keeper every time. And then they say it too late. That's fine. You at least said it. That's good. Okay. Now you have to try to say it before you, just as you're making the decision. So you're communicating earlier, and then layering in some different communication. I think another easy one is after a goalkeeper distribution, the ball's moving up the field, the goalkeeper is moving higher vertically on the field. They're then encouraging their teammates and making sure their teammates are moving up. What's too loud? It needs to be controlled voice. It can't be manicky. It can't be panicky. It needs to be loud and controlling. Sometimes at goalkeeper training, we would just work on calling. Like we would just be screaming. Like we would spend a funny like minute or two after a water break of just calling keeper, like to nothing, but just practicing our goalkeeper voice. So maybe you can have some fun with your child in that. When you're in the shower, you have to call keeper 10 times every time you take a shower, just make it something fun with your kids.
One thing I say about the volume is volume dictates urgency. So if you're increasing your urgency, there's a purpose behind it. Whereas you don't want to be rolling a ball out to someone and be like, calm down. Like you can use a better tone when saying turn, when you're rolling a ball out to somebody versus when you're coming out for a Braves cross and you're screaming keeper.
Yeah. And, we could have we could have an hour-long conversation on goalkeeper communication. So, just trying, those are great points as well. Absolutely, Eric.
Thank you. How do you suggest handling a keeper playing on an underperforming team, such as games when they're losing by a large amount and the field players are no longer motivated to play? Yeah. How can you motivate and keep morale up?
Yeah, I would say two things kind of mind quickly. Like that's a whole long conversation too. Like if you have a dedicated goalkeeper as a coach and the field players are not motivated and your goalkeeper is just getting pummeled, then you need to get him out of goal. I think like it's not helping anyone, but this is a great opportunity before that happens. And let's say that just happened in a recent game for the goalkeeper to demonstrate some leadership and talking to their defenders about how we're going to handle that next time. And so maybe the goalkeeper needs to go and talk to the coach and say, hey, coach, can we have a conversation at tomorrow's practice around how we're going to handle that situation next time if we go back behind by a few goals, and how we're going to stay motivated because we need to work on that. And so the goalkeeper leads that. Again, it really depends on the age of the child and their communication system. But then, if you have a set team and your set defenders that are working with you, then absolutely, it's totally fair for the goalkeeper to be upset at their teammates for handling that and for treating them that way and for treating their team that way. And I think the goalkeeper needs to demonstrate some leadership, not in the moment, but it's okay to get mad about those things. Like that's not cool for your teammates to show up like that. That's not the way we want to show up as teammates to one another. So that is part of our leadership as goalkeepers is holding a standard and making sure that the team, especially defenders, are living up to that standard and those expectations for focus and determination. I'm not talking about like not making a mistake, but just in terms of their effort.
Yeah. One final question. The only reason I'm letting this in is because we're both friends with this gentleman. Christian wants to know, when do you feel mental performance in sports psychology is necessary as part of the development, or when is it necessary?
Oh, as soon as possible. Like when is psychology necessary for us as children? Don't we all as parents just wish we had like a child psychologist available to us on the call? Like just to be able to pick up the phone and call. Like I would say that mental performance and overcoming mistakes, like this whole thing is so connected to goalkeeping. And I think when I look back on the goalkeepers that I competed against, and I look back on my career, and, I said earlier at the beginning of this call, like my career ended at the end of college because there wasn't a pro league for me to go play for. at the end of college, I wasn't on the national team because I cared too much about mistakes. I was too emotional as a goalkeeper at a very high level. I mean, I made it very far, but at that highest of high levels, I didn't have the mental performance support that I needed. And I know if I had gotten a chance to go play pro and had time to mature and grow, that I likely would have found my way onto the national team again at some point in the future. I feel confident in saying that. The likelihood of that, you know, like I feel like physically I had those gifts to be able to do that. And we need to understand that as a goalkeeper, like this is where we need to be showing up. And the best goalkeepers that I've seen, even youth goalkeepers that I work with, are those that are able to just brush things off and to able to move forward and that don't care and process too much about not even a mistake they made, but even like what other people are thinking about me. And we need to really resource and support our child. So especially if your child is really in that cycle of mental performance, then I would absolutely seek some sort of sports psychologist help. There's a lot of resources that we have on soccer parenting to support parents around mental performance. We've had great sports psychologists show up there around these types of things as well.
Yeah, and that's to your point. That's a life lesson. I mean, that's just how to, yeah. Well, Skye, before I say my thank yous, I would want to give you the opportunity to conduct final words, but I also want you to, if you could, talk to your company, Soccer Parenting. What you do is remarkable, and I think a lot of people here would benefit from learning more about soccer parenting and what it is they can get out of and benefit from your company.
Thanks so much. Hopefully that link works that I just put in. So my company is soccerparenting.com. Our education platform for parents is a second link that I put there. That's our membership site, Soccer Parent Resource Center. Really, we're working at the intersection of coaches and parents. And broadly, what I'm working to do is to establish trust in the coach-parent relationship. And then more specifically with parents, is our mission at Soccer Parenting is inspiring players by empowering parents. And I hope that you feel like tonight you received some more information, you do feel empowered yourself, and now you can ensure that your child feels a little bit more inspiration through their sports experience. So our education platform, Soccer Parent Resource Center, the Soccer Parenting membership site, if you will, is a great toolkit for parents. There's courses, there's great interviews with sports psychologists. We did an entire goalkeeper week last year where we had some of the best goalkeeping experts in the United States showing up: Phil Whetten, Kevin Hartman, John Bush, Jill Lloyden, Megan Hines, and Andy Kwai, just some great experts coming in and giving specifically resources to parents. So all the content that's on our site is from global sports experts, but specifically giving resources to parents. So I'm really proud of the work that we're doing and the impact that we're having, and really just the support that we're providing parents, because our kids do have a lot of demands on them, and the structures are really stressful and put a lot of pressure. And I think as parents, we need to, seek out, and at Soccer Parenting, we believe that when parents seek information about how to support their child, that great things will happen. So a big thank you to all the parents that are here tonight, because that's just what you did is, you are seeking information. And so great things will happen for your child. And I wish you all the best along their soccer playing journey.
Skye, thank you so much for your time tonight. I greatly appreciate, as I said earlier, I love listening to people's stories. I love listening to people's influence and their passions around goalkeeping, because everyone has a different angle and they're all right. And it's the passion that goes into it that I admire. And I just want to say thank you from not only myself, but from the United Goalkeeping Alliance. We appreciate your time greatly. Skye, thank you very much for tonight.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you too, Christian.
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.